talks about how it wants to run us. It tells us how much it wants to eat, how long it wants to sleep, how much it enjoys alcohol, or how wonderful it is outfitted to cause injury to somebody else. And God here, he displays what he thinks about the body. What does he think about our human body? What's its value? What can you do with it? Come on. It's painfully obvious what God thinks. What is it? What's he think about the human body? What's its value to him? What's he do with it? How does it go with 12:1? What's he do to Paul? What's he do to Paul's body? This was 12 years, or 14 years rather, before he wrote 2 Corinthians that this happened. For 14 years he's had bad vision. What does Paul think, or what does God think, and what is he teaching Paul about our bodies? What do we, if we're going to have the right attitude about them, what do we do with them with God? Because we have a problem with physical health being the only evidence of our Christian faith before the world. And it's a problem. Because here, God shows us that the value and weight of a spiritually strong person far outweighs their physical body. And the condition of the body is far more important with changing the heart and mind of a person than it is to be demonstrated healthy. Do you see that? It's important that the Holy Spirit wrote this. This is what enabled Paul to train up all those places he visited, to train them up, and then he could write this letter to them to have his core be consistent with what they saw and heard from him when he was present. He's hooking it up. What I do and say is consistent with what you saw and heard and who my strong man was. What I believed in Jesus Christ. And in 2 Corinthians 10, there was a difference. The people were reading a weak man. Somebody without power, somebody without impact, and somebody they aren't impressed with. Who did they see? They saw a guy with bad vision or some ailment. It's believed vision, I think, because it is in direct, it's a direct comparison to what it was given for, which is spiritual vision. So I believe that the story of what it was actually vision, physical vision that he had a problem with, I believe that that's true because it offsets the spiritual vision in which it was strengthening and protecting, allowing Paul to have without compromising his faith. So this stuff that we're reading, studying, and putting on the table is critical. It's very critical that we correct our vision consistent with the Word. Because if we're not going to be getting rid of the confusion that we bring to society, to the world. We got to get rid of the confusion that we're causing when we run first to what the doctor offers before we go to the church. We're confusing the world completely, and we're messing up our charge of the ministry of reconciliation. We're messing it up. We don't want the gifts. We don't want to practice them. We have trouble studying them. We have trouble changing our minds about them. And all of that needs to happen. It needs to happen. But there's a problem with our core because we're practicing we're at the envelope of our unbelief instead of it leaking out here or there and us messing up and doing things that are damaging. We establish them and we stand on these untrue things. And the world is very confused by us. But God points it out here in His work, in God's work, which is to cause people to believe in the one He sent, which is what the pool of Siloam, and I know that's the wrong pronunciation, but there's another pool in Jerusalem where Christ sent the blind man. And the pool, this pool it deals with the authority of Christ, and the man was sent to the pool, and that authority was to heal. Okay, and Christ's healing goes beyond. It goes beyond which the story we're going to look at next week. Go and look at the story about Mary's brother who was raised from the dead. Go look at the story. We said we were going to do it before this, but we're having an awful time. It's like we're walking through mud, trying to comprehend what the Word is saying to us. It seems like we're struggling too much, but go and look at the story, because there is it's so valuable. When Christ does his testimony of who he is in that story, okay, after he arrives at the burial site, he says, "Show me where he's buried," and he goes to the site, okay. His goal is to connect with his Father's work. And his Father's work is to believe in the one he sent. To believe in the one he sent. And so Christ said about the sickness, if you go and read the story, who knows where that story is? Where is that story at? Who's read it? About Lazarus. No one's read it recently? I asked you to go read it because I really wanted it in the study. I wanted to know what you saw there, what you think about. It's in John 11. Okay, and verse 4 is so important. It is so important. And it ties in with 2 Corinthians 12, 7-10. Okay? Because the capacity to raise from the dead, raise from the dead, okay? And I know we're struggling with what we think is simplicity in healing, because we deal with healing so much socially, and in our carnal and corporeal existence, we talk about, getting rid of sickness and disease, so it's easy for us. So to me, it was the way in, because of our problems that we have. It was a place to start with talking about healing. But when Christ raised Lazarus from the dead, he was finishing his work in dealing with a sickness. He was finishing the work. And what is the work of God? To believe in the one he sent. So we've got to get a handle on sickness. We've got to understand why God created the human body, and that it is susceptible to sickness. And what does that have to do with his work? What were his intentions? Why was the garden closed after the root of the sickness, the capacity for man to become ill, was initiated? What was value to God in him doing that? Isn't that interesting? Okay, so John chapter 11, read that. Look at the argument in these verses as they talk about a healing. Okay, I have some other verses. John 6:26, John 6:29. I have so many. John 9:7, John 5:2. But you want to see Philippians 3:7 and 6:29. If you put them together, it's very interesting. Romans 12:1 through 4 again, Philippians 3:7. There are so many verses, but what you want to come up with is a scale when Christ is in John 11, when the Holy Spirit is teaching us about dealing with sickness. What is the first necessary event for sickness to occur?
Sin.
Okay, but does sin affect God? Does God sin?
No.
No. So in my study, I saw the first event of sin is the human condition. Because if we were not in our condition that we are, sin wouldn't exist. It wouldn't matter. Wouldn't have anything to do with us. So the first thing is that we're human and that we are carnal and we are susceptible to sin. Because sin can't get to God. Can't do anything to him. He has no capacity to sin. And neither did Christ. So, who was sent? So, what would be the second thing that has to happen? What would be the third thing? And so sickness happens, okay, at some point here. When does it end? Because Christ said, this sickness is not going to end in death. Because this sickness has far more value than somebody dying. And if we had that attitude, would we go first to the doctor? If we realized what God was saying to Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, would we go first to the water at Bethsaida? And if we are capable of learning, would we stay there 38 years? What is going on? What is the Word trying to teach us? What's it trying to tell us? There is so much more for us to learn, and we need it for a foundation to change. We really do. We really need to apply it. We can't just learn it. It has to become part of our faith walk. It has to be the faith that the grace that we've been given prepared in advance for us to do. Ephesians 2:10. It has to become part of our asset of salvation. So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of studying to do. Go back and read 12 again, and see that it culminates, and Paul accepts it and walks in it when God makes him realize that he needs to write to the Corinthians. 14 years later, he wrote to the Corinthians, and he wrote them with the truth, 2 Corinthians 10, about their problem, their vision problem. They might have had 20/20 vision in 2 Corinthians 10. But what good was that vision in seeing who Paul was? What good was the vision? Okay? It's very interesting. So, anyways, I hope today opened us up and not caused confusion, but it's such a short time. We've been studying an hour and almost 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and it's such a short time, and I'm trying to get as much on the table for us to think about, because we're not going to meet for a whole week. I should have this loaded up by tomorrow, so but I do have my brother coming, as I told you in the beginning. I do have my brother coming, and it's going to be a very trying time, because I'm not used to giving up my house to a person. Michelle's been gone for coming up on 3 years, and so if I set a cup down, it's still